Welcome to the International Conference on Masculinities. I'm Michael Kimmel. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities at Stony Brook University, and we are the organizers of the conference. This is the largest conference ever in North America devoted to engaging men and boys for gender equality. Never before have so many people gathered in one place sharing one simple belief, that if we are to empower women and girls, we have to engage boys and men. This is a historic event. We're here on the eve of the Commission of the Status of Women at the UN on the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Conference to proclaim our support for gender equality, for an end to discrimination, the violence that constrains women's lives, and restrains social and economic development. Before we begin, I want everyone to stand up. Thank you. We are here tonight from over 100 countries, from every continent except Antarctica. We need to work on them. We range in age from 15 to over 80. We are many races, many genders, many cultures, many nationalities, many spiritual traditions. These are the identities that shape us, that define us. As we enter this room tonight, we also now stand together. Look around the room. Look at your neighbors. Greet them. Welcome them. This being flu season, you might not want to shake hands. Over the next 4 days, we are going to engage, debate, connect, argue, agree, disagree. We will be inspired, entertained, amused, frustrated, grateful, and motivated. What I ask now is that we remain open, hearts and minds, because despite all of our differences, there is not one gender, not one race nor religious tradition that asks that we ignore or denigrate the humanity of the other. In that, we are all united. Let's listen to each other, hear each other, and respect the humanity of each other. Let us remember that we stand together now because, quite simply, we also stand for something. We know that gender inequality is wrong, that it is morally wrong, economically inefficient, socially corrupting, psychologically damaging, physically wounding, and that it is simply unacceptable. That discrimination and violence towards some diminishes us all. That we cannot make ourselves bigger by making others smaller. Because we know also, as Gloria Steinem reminds us, that we are linked, not ranked. Linked, not ranked. We stand together now, linked, not ranked, to recommit ourselves to that struggle, a struggle both so enormously global and so intimately personal for the full equality of women and girls around the world. Thank you. Please be seated. Not only is this a historic event, but it's a cooperative event. To put this conference together, we have partnered with 3 other organizations: Men Engage, a coalition of more than 600 NGOs around the world dedicated to engaging men and boys; the American Men's Studies Association, an organization of scholars, students, researchers, and teachers engaged in exploring the meanings of masculinities; and Man Up, an activist organization dedicated to engaging youth leaders around the world to engage young people to end violence against women. You'll meet the leaders of those organizations later this evening, and of course, throughout the conference. But I want you to meet the Center's team now, the team that worked at the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities, and to join with me in thanking them for the amazing work in planning this conference. Lisa Beth Platania, our administrator, Cliff Leake and Cheryl Llewellyn. I don't even know if Cliff and Cheryl are even in the room, but if you are, I want you to stand now. Are you here? No, because they're too busy running around. They have been an amazing to work with. You are all here not only because of the great work you do, but all of the great work they did to get us all here. The reason that we partnered with these organizations speaks to the vision of the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities. We are a place where conversations between activists and researchers, with clinicians and funders, as well take place, and take place differently. Typically, those of you who have had any experience watching academic researchers and activists get together, those conversations don't usually go very well. Usually, and that's actually because of the researchers. We often say, well, based on my research, here's what you activists should do. I think that's entirely wrong. We are changing this. As researchers, we want to say to the activists, what do you need to know? What kinds of research can we do that will enable you activists to do your work better, be more effective, get stronger and more reliable funding, implement better policy? We researchers are inspired by and frankly awed by the kinds of projects we hear you explaining going on around the world. We want our research to serve you. Over the next few days, we want you to tell us what you need. Tell us what sorts of research would enhance, strengthen, and enable the work that you do. We were very lucky early on to have been partnered with the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. They provided the initial funding for the center and the initial funding for this conference. We are also thrilled to be partnered in this conference and going forward with UN Women and their visionary leader, Phumzile Mambo Nguka. Phumzile has initiated the He for She campaign, an effort to engage men around the world for gender equality. I am proud to be a He for She, that's what this button is, and this is a He for She event, so thank you. And I just want to say we have a lot of work to do, even in the United States. So before we engage in what a friend of mine once called premature self-congratulation, let us be aware of where we stand on these issues. The United States is the only industrial country and one of only 4 countries in the world that offers no paid parental leave to anyone. The other 3 countries, in case you're curious, Lesotho, Swaziland, and Papua New Guinea. The United States is one of only 7 countries in the world that has not ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. The others, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, Palau, and Tonga. The United States has the highest rate of gender-based violence in the industrial world. We have a lot of work to do. And we are here this weekend to work together to engage men and boys to go further, to go deeper. It's one thing to agree about gender equality, and it's another step, another important step, to go to a website and click on an icon. But what's next? The morning after the launch of He for She, after Emma Watson gave that wonderful speech, I sat with my graduate students in a seminar, and I said, okay, so what do we do now? What's the next step after you click on a button on a website? And one of my students, we tried to find some catchy phrase that would express how men can go further than simply clicking their mouse. The rhyming was not going to work with the clicking part. So I said, what is the equivalent of walking your talk in cyberspace? One of my graduate students said, citing Facebook, live your like. So that's what I'm going to invite us to do this weekend and going forward. Live your like. One more word about, if you don't mind, the conference bag. Does anybody have a conference bag I can show you quickly? These conference bags come to us. We've disassembled them, but they quite easily reassemble into a heart, so they pack easily. They are made by the Tuba Humarize Cooperative, an organization that empowers socially and economically marginalized women living in Rwanda. Most of the cooperative members are survivors of gender-based violence. Many are living with HIV. These bags are made by these women to raise money for their cooperative. And so we are thrilled to support them, and you now have our permission to wear your open hearts on your sleeves. Let me introduce our MC, our Master of Ceremonies for the evening, Pat Mitchell. Yeah. Pat Mitchell's name is synonymous with the phrase women in the media. From her earliest days as a news reporter, talk show host, White House correspondent, to her days as a producer and host of television shows that have won, get this, 37 Emmys, 5 Peabody Awards, and 2 Academy Award nominations, Pat Mitchell has promoted, produced, and supported a greater media presence for women. She was the first woman to be president and CEO of PBS, and is currently the chair of the Women's Media Center, the Sundance Film Institute, and is the host of TED Women. Pat Mitchell.
Well, Michael, you're starting this off right. You're changing the language already. Master of Ceremonies. I like that. I've been mistress of ceremonies many times, but it's so great to feel like a master. And in doing so, Michael's choice of words is, as it always is, challenging to us to think outside the boundaries of our language. Over the years, it's been a great privilege of mine to often be a moderator or a panelist or invited into the community of women's conferences. And women have often, since Gloria showed us the way, found the support of coming together in community. And there in these convenings, sometimes many all over the world, we have found that sense of community and support and advocacy. And tonight, as I look around this room, I realize that each and every one of you has chosen to be here tonight and in the few days ahead, because you too are looking for community, for support, for advocacy, and with Michael's leadership and the knowledge that will be shared by this incredible lineup of speakers, we will work together to unpack some of the cultural stereotypes that we are living with that are leading us to the challenges that Michael so brilliantly and articulately laid out, the challenges to true gender equality. So whether we are born male or female or choose to be male or female, we're trapped within the definitions of feminine and masculine. Michael and his team and the team that is in this room now, the community that is gathered here to spend this time together, we will explore the limitations of those stereotypes and expectations. And what lies ahead is joyous in the opportunities, the unity, the progress that begins here tonight. There were so many people who wanted to be here who could not, and one of them wrote us a letter which she's asked me to share. She, too, is a great champion of women and the empowerment of women and the ending of violence against women. And she's also a great spokesperson for the movement now of men to both support women and find their own way to true gender equality. I'm talking, of course, about the New York Senator, Kristen Gillibrand. And this is the letter that I've been asked to read from her personally. It is a privilege to send greetings to everyone who is attending the International Conference on Masculinities. I'm grateful for groups such as the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities for their steadfast commitment to bringing awareness to men and to boys' issues, as well as presenting the social justice among genders. As a mother of 2 young boys, I share your interest to generate research to promote change for this very important issue of our time. Your perseverance in the field of gender equality and commitment to hosting this conference is an outstanding tribute to Dr. Michael Kimmel and his highly relevant research and his activism within the gender studies community. It is my hope that your efforts will inspire others to take part in actions large and small, public and private, to bring about change and political awareness to this issue. So please accept my very best wishes for the wonderful events and the many more years of continued success. Yours truly, Senator Kristen Gillibrand. And to start us on this exploration, a man who knows a lot about language, and who uses it brilliantly. Please join me in welcoming Carlos Andres Gomez, poet, actor, author of the memoir, Man Up, Reimagining Modern Manhood. Please welcome Carlos.
I believe it is a defiant and revolutionary act to be our genuine selves. And my grandmother was a person in my life who always nurtured and gave permission to the tender, the sensitive, the kind little boy that I was. And so I want to do this. I want to read a poem for her to bring her spirit and her energy into the room, but I also want to bring the spirit and energy of someone in your life that gives you permission to be your best, your fullest, and your most authentic self. And this piece is called Hallelujah, and it goes like this. 8 months shy of 100, and still filled with the wonderment of a child, my grandmother is a revelation tumbling in on itself. Songs and secrets snaked into the creases of her smile. Her 63-year-old hunches washing dishes in the sink. Her knees in second grade tear through the living room like a derailed train car. Prayer-swollen hips from her wedding photos. Call up to a rosary. Ask for life. And I am molded clay from the hands with which she now holds my chubby face. I am small and curious. Ay, mijito, my dear son, she squeals. Tan bello, so beautiful. These are the words she uses to anchor each day. And I am jealous of how she does, the abandon with which she soaks it all up. Her face is a yawning earthquake of tremor and pulse. Her hands, the tectonic plates of her body's fierce hope, her head, stuttering out music as it tries to focus on just one thing. Now she takes in my sister. Awkward middle school face of pockmarked acne in her hands. Ay, mijita, oh my dear daughter, tan bella, so beautiful. My sister smiles. She is truly beautiful for the first time in her life. Wears a sash of blushing cheeks. Mijito, my dear child, tan bello, so beautiful. In a world of envy-fueled violence, where hate explodes out of our scars like weeds, the lessened versions of ourselves spreading like wildfire, my grandmother is a revelation tumbling in on itself, a repeating gospel on loop, where each person she meets is a child, returns the miracle and amazement we left in our Velcro shoes, awakens our bodies with the suddenness of her eyes. Everything is beautiful. Keloid and awkward is beautiful. Adolescence is beautiful. Men, for the first time, can be called beautiful. Her hands reach for the sun as though it were food, a cloud. As we walk, she shakes, awed by the emerald hue of fresh grass, hugging her apartment building like jealous, thirsty arms. My grandmother is the ripest hallelujah, where everyone is a child, is a dear daughter, a dear son, has a story and roots and branches twisting embrace through the sterile bars of a subway car, picking it up where every object, moment, everything in the sparkling gasp of an earth is not just beautiful. It is more than beautiful. It is too beautiful. It is so, so beautiful.
It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, the president of Stony Brook University, Dr. Samuel L. Stanley, Jr. Dr. Stanley received his Bachelor of Arts degree in Biological Sciences from the University of Chicago and his medical degree from Harvard Medical School. After completing his residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, he went to Washington University in St. Louis for a fellowship in infectious diseases, eventually becoming a professor in the departments of medicine and molecular microbiology. A highly distinguished biomedical researcher, Dr. Stanley was one of the nation's highest recipients of support from the National Institutes of Health. He was appointed Vice Chancellor for Research at Washington University and he served in that capacity until he accepted the position as president of Stony Brook University. In addition, today he serves as the vice chair of Brookhaven Science Associates, which co-manages Brookhaven National Laboratory. He serves on the boards of SUNY Research Foundation, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, Goodwill Industries of Greater New York and New Jersey, and the Long Island Association. He's chairman of the National Science Advisory Board for Biosecurity, which advises the United States government on issues related to the communication, dissemination, and performance of sensitive biological research. Dr. Stanley was a member of the National Advisory Allergy and Infectious Disease Council at NIH and a member of the NIH Director's Blue Ribbon Panel on the National Emerging Infectious Disease Laboratories. He serves on the board of directors of the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities, the APLU, and as an ambassador for the Paul Rogers Society for Global Health Research. And he recently became a member of the NCAA Board of Directors. Dr. Stanley's leadership has truly been transformative. He's committed to the continued growth and excellence of our university, but foremost is his unwavering commitment to the academic success of all of our students. This is particularly true for the high percentage of Pell-eligible students we have at Stony Brook. His commitment to equality is evident in all of his actions. Dr. Stanley is committed to creating an atmosphere in which all students, faculty, and staff can achieve all that they are capable of being. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Dr. Samuel L. Stanley, Jr.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie, and it's really a great pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm so pleased that all of you have joined us for what I think is such an important conference. At the outset, I really want to thank Michael Kimmel, Distinguished Professor of Sociology at Stony Brook University, very proud to claim him, for being the driving force behind this conference, and really for being a visionary leader who has played an absolutely crucial role in elevating the study of men and masculinities and the public discussion of engaging men and boys in gender equality. Michael is truly an international leader in this field, and his leadership, I think, and impact is really evident by the extraordinary gathering that's taking place tonight and will take place over the next few days. The Center for Study of Men and Masculinities at Stony Brook University is a vital force for generating engaged, interdisciplinary research on boys, men, masculinities, and gender. It supports and promotes research that furthers the development of boys and men in the service of healthy masculinities and greater gender equality. This conference is really a wonderful example of its work, bringing together researchers, practitioners, and activists in conversation and collaboration with other leaders from across the country and around the world. The center is also a great example of a core element of our mission at Stony Brook University, to carry out research and intellectual endeavors of the highest international standards that advance knowledge and have immediate or long-range practical significance. That's just part of our mission, but it's a central part. As a medical researcher for much of my career, I understand well the importance of research and its practical impact. It's that mix of research and practical application that is so vital, bringing evidence and proven strategies to bear on the discussion of public policy and helping to develop pragmatic and successful solutions. It's the key to smart decision-making and to ensuring that we have the best chance of overcoming the challenges we face. It's also how we understand who we are and what we want to be. I've just returned from Kenya, where Stony Brook University has a research facility called the Turkana Basin Institute near Lake Turkana in the northwestern part of the country. The Turkana Basin Institute is privately run by legendary paleontologist Richard Leakey. He is a member of our faculty and is world-renowned for having led the team that in 1984 discovered what we now call Turkana Boy, the most complete early human skeleton ever found. It is believed to be between 1.5 and 1.6 million years old, and the boy is thought to have been about 8 years old when he died. As I visited the site just a few days ago where that discovery was made, I could not help but think of the connection between that discovery and the conference that we are now hosting. On the one hand, we continue to strive to understand human evolution and how we came to be who we are today. On the other hand, we must strive to determine who we will become and what we want to be like in the future. How will we as human beings view each other? How will we relate to each other? How will we treat each other? How will we ensure that each of us is treated with equality, dignity, and shared appreciation? The issues on which we are focusing in this conference could not be more important or timely. They are fundamental in how we treat each other, how we work together to improve the human condition, how we endeavor to achieve true equality. These issues are literally in the news on a daily basis. What, for instance, is the role of men in gender equality? How should men be involved in prevention of violence against women? How do we promote healthy behaviors? How do we ensure the rights of all people, regardless of race, sex, religion, gender, or sexuality? How do we combat sexual assault and gender-based violence? How do we prevent sexually transmitted diseases? How do we improve the relationship between law enforcement and men in minority communities? These are not esoteric issues. These are among the leading issues and most confounding problems of our time. And this conference is tackling these issues, as well as dozens of others of similar importance. In hosting this conference, we at Stony Brook University do not suggest that we are somehow free of these challenges. We, as an institution, have to confront them along with our society more broadly. But it's that willingness to face them and improve ourselves in the process that is so important. I congratulate Michael and the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities on orchestrating this remarkably important conference. I'm pleased that Stony Brook University is playing such a central role in it, and I look forward to the discussion ahead and the opportunity to collaborate on new avenues for promoting, pursuing, and ensuring gender equality. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Brad Lander. I'm a member of the New York City Council, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you here to New York City, and on behalf of the mayor and the city council, to present a proclamation. I want to give a special thank you to Michael Kimmel, who I'm honored to call a constituent, and to Dr. Stanley, and a special thanks to all of you who have come here from all around the world and all around the country, engaged in this truly important theme, engaging men and boys for gender equality. That speaks to me very deeply. I do have to say, I'm inspired by Michael's quote of Gloria Steinem about us being linked, not ranked. But I make no mistake, in both the houses that matter to me, in my home and in the legislative chamber of the New York City Council, the fiercest fighters for gender equality are women. My wife's the vice president at Planned Parenthood New York City, opening up a new clinic in Queens this spring, every day fighting to make sure. That's right, Planned Parenthood always gets more applause than anything else I say, truthfully. But fighting every day for reproductive health equity and for access for all women at a time when it is still harder and harder. And my daughter, Rosa, at age 11, just finished organizing the third annual Girls Read for Girls readathon. She and a couple of fourth grade friends were inspired by Malala to organize a readathon that has now raised over $25,000 across 3 years for girls' education around the world. Notwithstanding that, my 15-year-old son and I are very clear that it is not just our responsibility, but overwhelmingly to our benefit to do every single thing that we can to make sure that he grows up in a world where no one raises a hand in violence, where women don't face catcalls constantly when they're walking down the streets of New York City, when nobody faces discrimination in the workplace, and when no one is selling women into slavery or selling their ideas short in our schools and our classrooms and our boardrooms. In the city council as well, we are honored to have, I'm very proud to be the deputy leader for the New York City Council. The leader of the New York City Council is a fierce feminist and the first citywide Latina elected official in New York City, Melissa Mark Viverito, and she asked me to convey her regards and her appreciation. And our finance chair, Julissa Ferreras, who helps preside over the work we do on our $75 billion New York City budget, every year convene the men of the council to stand up on a range of issues, committing to do all we can to end all forms of sexual violence and to be champions in the fight for gender equality. And it's they who have led the council in expanding sick days to all New Yorkers, so nobody has to choose between their job and their health or their kids' health. In demanding that the state legislature pass paid family leave so everybody can take care of a newborn or a sick relative. We're going to be looking this year at the issues of a fair work week and scheduling so that people in retail and social services, mostly women employees, don't have the impossibility of not being able to feed their families, have health care, know what their schedules are, whether they work at McDonald's or at Starbucks or in our healthcare or retail institutions. So we've got a long way to go, as Michael said, but we are going to get there step by step. And so we are honored to be your allies in this work. And I just want to therefore present this proclamation from the New York City Council. Whereas, even in the 21st century, women and girls all over the world continue to be denied basic freedoms and equal treatment. And whereas to empower women and girls, men and boys are essential to winning the fight, we must teach our sons to be advocates for gender rights and instill and cultivate in them the notions of acceptance and respect from an early age. And I'll skip a few of the words here. Whereas this week, the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities at Stony Brook University, together with UN Women, Men Engage, Man Up, Men's Studies Association, and Beijing Plus 20 are bringing together researchers and activists from all around the world. And whereas persistent gender inequalities and discrimination of women and girls are not only morally wrong, but major obstacles to sustainable development, including poverty eradication, and economic growth around the world, therefore be it known that the Council of the City of New York gratefully recognizes the work of all these organizations for their unwavering commitment and rewarding contributions as champions of equality, and does declare this week to be Engaging Men and Boys for Gender Equality Week in New York City, this 5th day of March in the year 2015. Thank you for your work, and congratulations.
Good evening, all. I'm Gary Barker. I'm the director of Promundo, and I'm also the co-chair of the Men Engage Alliance, which is proud to be a partner and co-organizer of the event. Before I introduce the first of our amazing keynote speakers, I want to give a 30-second call out to the women who made the bags, because I want to tell you about another product they made that Michael left me to tell the story of. We asked the women to make another product that unfortunately we couldn't get 700 of them here. They're making dolls for dads. As part of a collaboration with the Ministry of Health, Promundo and our local NGO partner Ramrek are working to train healthcare workers across Rwanda to reach first-time fathers when they come into the clinic with their pregnant partner in a cycle of workshops around how to care for their new child, how to be a supportive partner throughout the prenatal period, and we include activities around respect and non-use of violence against their partners. So we're thrilled that the same women who many have been, as Michael noted, survivors of violence are in their own hands putting the seeds out there so that we can see that more Rwandan women and women in many parts of the world do not face the same violence from men. So thrilled that, again, it's a little more complicated to get 700 of those dolls in the country. We didn't think Homeland Security would go for that. They weigh about what a real-life baby does, and they're filled with soil. So we thought Homeland Security would think that was something suspicious. It is now my honor to introduce our next speaker and a very cherished partner in this work. Phumzile Malambo Nkuya is the United Nations Undersecretary General and Executive Director of UN Women, the second ever Director of UN Women. And I'll give you just a little snippet of what her job description was when she came on, which was to take stock of where the world had come since 1995 at the International Conference on Women, identify the huge gaps, which we've already noted, and then see if she could whip the 190 plus member states of the UN into taking these issues seriously. You know what that's like. That taking stock is part of this year's negotiation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is nothing less than the blueprint of what we hope can make this planet a sustainable and safe place to live. And we've certainly seen how much Phumzile has tried to say that we have no sustainable planet if there's not gender equality. Phumzile's made it clear since she took the job that she sees men as crucial partners in the journey toward gender equality. And it is no secret, and we should be frank, that she's taken some heat for this from other UN women staff, from partners from women's rights organizations around the world that have a legitimate fear that if men come into the equation, that we might upstage the whole work for women's empowerment. I want to reassure them, those who would doubt, that anyone who knows about Phumzile's past in the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa and her leadership in the first democratic government in South Africa should know that her focus on gender justice is right and just. And on behalf of my organization, on behalf of Men Engage, we are deeply appreciative of that vision and her reminder to us that men are part of the struggle, must be allies in the struggle, but that we're not the center of the struggle. Phumzile, we're honored to partner with you and UN Women and He for She and to have you here with us. We're pleased to stand with you and beside you, but never upstaging you. Phumzile, over to you.
Everything that I've heard this evening gives me a feel that we're changing the world one dude at a time. Because everybody who has spoken here is saying something that is not business as usual. So thank you so much for an evening like this. Thank you to you, Michael, for convening us in this manner. Thank you to Dr. Stanley. Thank you to the leaders who are here, change makers, Cheryl. Thank you to Ambassador MacDonald and everybody who is here as a delegate for making the time to spend your evening reflecting on these issues. I'm also honored to be here with you. I'm delighted to share with you that a few days ago, I was in Chile with women leaders. And what was striking for me at that conference was that the conclusion of that conference was that what we are about as women leaders is what good men and boys are about. And that ultimately, we will not be able to change the world, not unless we collaborate and we work towards a world in which men and women are truly equal together. This is important because it is now 20 years after we adopted the Beijing Platform for Action, in which we had focused on girls' education. On girls, we focused on education for women and girls. We focused on health. We had focused on women in economy, women in environment. We focused on women in armed conflict, and we focused on women and human rights. Interesting, 20 years ago, in 1995, the hope was that by 2005, we would have reached gender equality. It was a very optimistic moment. Here we are, that 2005 is gone, and we're still at it. But what has been interesting that in these last 20 years, We have seen that more girls are at school, even though there's lots of girls and boys who are not at school. Access to health for women and girls has improved. We've also seen that states created machinery to address gender equality. It was after Beijing that we saw women's ministries, gender equality commissions. We heard much more about equal opportunities. We also saw laws in many countries that attempted to address women's economic exclusion, as well as highlighting the plight of the girl child. Now, we have not been able to address all of these issues effectively. We know that, for instance, in relation to human rights, we passed a lot of laws, but we have not implemented them vigorously. As a result, what we have achieved in development, because we're not as robust on human rights, we've sort of eroded it. We also neglected to involve men and boys in the last 20 years, even though it was a hot discussion in Beijing. So we are now making sure that we're closing the gap. There's more and more men who want to stand up and say, I'm part of the struggle and I'm a feminist, and that is so refreshing. That is so refreshing. So with gender equality comes greater liberation for all. With gender equality comes improved educational outcomes, better health, greater economic prosperity, and sustainable peace. We cannot, however, do this within the paradigm that we find ourselves in. So one of the most important things for us to do as men and women, boys and girls, is to disrupt the current paradigm. Is for men to lead us in disrupting patriarchy, because they are the main beneficiaries of whatever is the benefit of patriarchy, even though patriarchy has a big downside for both men and women. It is important also for us to have a multifaceted approach, because what we are trying to change occurs at home and in the family, at school and in society, at the workplace, at places of worship. And if we are to truly change the current trajectory, we have to address the changes that we're about in every aspect of our lives. It is also important that in leading the disruption of patriarchy, men must stand up and be the ones who say, I will not marry a child. It should not be women's organizations and children and families who are fighting to stop early and forced child marriages. It should be men who are refusing to do this. It should be men who stand up and say, I am against violence against women, and I will not lay a hand on a woman. It should not be women's organization who must be campaigning to end violence against women. It should be men, and I like this one, who must say, I will not receive a pay that is higher than that of a woman if I'm doing equal work. Amen. I refuse to take this paycheck if it's not the same paycheck as Pumzile's. A bit. It should be men who must say, I refuse to sit in boards or in institutions where we make decisions in the absence of women. And it should be men who must say, I want to participate in childcare, in care work at home, and in that way share the burden that women are carrying disproportionately of unpaid care work, which has to be recognized redistributed, and in some cases, remunerated. This, as Michael has taught me, is about recognizing that you have a privilege and refuse to have it because you think it is an unjust advantage over someone else, and taking an active role in denouncing that privilege. This is what we are attempting to do in He for She. This is what Cheryl is wanting to do in Leaning In with Men. We are asking men to be with us, to organize themselves, to be in solidarity, but not to lead us, but rather to be side by side. The He for She campaign provides a platform to crowdsource what we hope will be a critical mass of men coming at different level of understanding the issues. From those who think I've just pressed the button and it is over, and to those who will engage them to make sure that once you've pressed the button and you've signed up as a He for She, there is a lot of work that you have to do in order to prove that you are truly committed. It is a place where you can be supported by other men and women, where you can share your stories, your triumphs and your tears, where you can learn from others who have been traveling this road for much longer. It is also a place where we say to heads of state, if you want to be a He for She as a head of state, tell me what you are going to do in your country that is unprecedented. If you are a He for She head of state, please ban female genital mutilation in your country. Now we're talking. If you are a He for She head of state, have an ambition for your country to be amongst one of the first countries to reach gender parity, and give us a map, give us a roadmap on how you're going to do that so that we can rally behind you, your country, and support you. As CEOs, if you become a He for She, we ask you to please go to the treasury of your company and check if everybody is paid equally. Please, if you are a He for She CEO, do something about the glass ceiling in the company and anything else that you may identify in the company. We've also reached out to universities, specifically because there's a critical mass of young men there that are going to lead us in one way or the other. And we're asking universities that become He for She universities to do something about giving the men in their universities an orientation about gender equality. We expect the university to also make sure that the campus is safe and that the men in that university take an active role in making sure that the campus is safe for both men and women. So it is exciting to see how frantically heads of state, CEOs, universities are actually working to define their He for She announcements. And I'm looking forward to a day when we will be able to actually share with you what these important institutions and personalities in our society have committed to do. I have no doubt that there will be challenges along the way as they try to implement their commitment, but the most important thing is to take the first step and to be in a community of other people who are trying to achieve the same thing. As we are here today, we are forging a community of practice together. We're going to learn together and we're going to rise and fall, but we must be determined to make real change. Because we are the first generation that has a true possibility to end poverty in the world. We are the first generation that has a true and a significant possibility to disrupt gender inequality. As Frantz Fanon has said, that extraordinary African, every generation has a mission to fulfill or betray. I believe our mission as this generation in this century is to decisively address gender inequality. It is up to us whether we are going to fulfill or betray this mission. But looking in this room, I see a lot of people who will make sure that we fulfill rather than betray this mission. I also saw people from my country here, South Africans. Amandla! Amandla! Thank you so much for being here. Please take the spirit back to South Africa and everywhere you go and be change makers. Thanks.
My name is Todd Minerson. I'm the executive director of White Ribbon. And Jimmy is not feeling very great today, so he couldn't make it. And I want us all to just take a moment and send him some good vibes and some love, because he could surely use it now, and we have a lot of respect and time for Jimmy and the work that he does. And it's my honor to introduce Ambassador Henry MacDonald. And I can read you his extremely impressive bio, or I could tell you a little bit about how I know Ambassador MacDonald, because I've gotten to know him over the past several months through an initiative that he's been primarily responsible for as the UN ambassador to the United Nations for Suriname, the Barbershop Campaign, or Barbershop Conference held in January. And I had the privilege of being part of that conference, and have been so impressed with Ambassador MacDonald's dedication to doing that. He has a job. There's another thing you can do with privilege. You can use it for good. We call it the benevolent dictator move, where you can take what you have and use it for good. And of all of the issues that challenge us and face us in this world, Ambassador MacDonald has chosen to ignite the men of the United Nations to get on board for gender equality. And in our conversations leading up to the conference, I asked him, why the barbershop? And we had some great conversations about it being a place where men can hang out, men can talk together, men can challenge each other, and some other things exposed themselves during the conference about the nature of a barbershop. It's a place where men can let other men touch them. It's a place where men can be vulnerable with each other. It's a place where we congregate before special occasions and where we mark moments in our lives. And for that, there was a symbolism to the Barbershop Conference that was also quite powerful in thinking about the work we do and getting men to change those harmful ideas about masculinity that cause women and girls on this planet, transgendered individuals on this planet, and men and boys ourselves so much harm. So it's a great honor for me to introduce Ambassador Henry MacDonald, the permanent representative for Suriname to the United Nations.
Thank you very much, Todd Minerson. First of all, let me thank Stony Brook University, the director, and Michael Kimmel for inviting me to speak here. I'm really honored to be here. Also, Madame Fumsile, I'm always thrilled to be with you in a room. I always like to listen to you, and you are the person who inspires me. Despite the fact that 20 years ago at the 1995 World Conference on Women in Beijing, the global community signed on to a plan that would incorporate gender equality in their penal codes by revoking any discriminatory laws. Presently, there are still countries where a man can abduct a woman or girl, marry her against her will, and is still immune to prosecution. Distinguished audience, in the 21st century, in many countries, married women cannot get a divorce without permission of their husbands. Violence by a husband for the purpose of correcting his wife is considered lawful in several countries. And in others, a cheating wife can be legally killed by her husband or stoned to death by a decision of the courts. There are still countries where sisters don't inherit as much as their brothers do. Also, there are countries where men can choose their wives' work, and in at least one country, women cannot legally drive cars. In some countries from Africa, Asia, the Middle East to the Caribbean, marital rape is acceptable so long as the girl or the spouse is over 13 years or 14 years old. In fact, such actions are not even considered rape at all. Luckily, in Suriname changed its laws just a few years ago. This is just a small synopsis of our current world affairs according to the women's advocacy group Equality Now. Their report, Ending Sex Discrimination in the Law, was released 2 weeks ago. Yet, I want to take this opportunity to talk about the real-life situation of women all over the world, no matter where they live. Presently, many agree that women and girls need to be at the center of the global development process. Consequently, I will also talk about the reasons why the United Nations should be key in this transformation process, and why everyone, ordinary men and women, girls and boys, should be educated to understand that gender justice, gender equality, and the empowerment of women and girls are not just the right thing to do, since these are human rights issues, but also that these are the smart things to do, since it's all about intelligent economics and the eradication of poverty worldwide. Distinguished guests, men and women live in two different security or safety worlds. With respect to violence and safety, men simply fear that women will laugh at them, while women fear that men will beat, rape, or kill them. 2 months ago in January, Iceland and Suriname took the bold step to organize a barbershop conference at the United Nations, mainly to start this critical conversation among men and to sensitize the male diplomats at the United Nations at all levels about the relevancy of gender justice and gender equality. We knew at the outset that this step would be controversial. However, no revolution has been won by consensus. It was interesting to hear and to witness how much men in the room had to struggle to put themselves in positions women face daily. There was quite a bit of discussion regarding simple things like having to make a decision to cross the street as one walked down the road simply because a group of guys are approaching them from the opposite direction. Fear of being harassed, raped, or even being killed because of the way one decides to dress. Or act like one is talking on the mobile phone at night so that an individual can think that you may call for help if necessary. Or even check the rear seat of a locked vehicle when one enters at night. Men do not fear for their safety in the same way women generally do. It was an eye-opener and a new experience for them, and they truly had a hard time comprehending this everyday reality of women. In the book, Halt the Skies by Nicholas D. Kristof and Cheryl Woodham, they wrote, in the 19th century, the central moral challenge was slavery. In the 20th century, it was the battle against totalitarianism, or you may also say colonialism. With my country, Suriname, many United Nations member states agree with these intellectuals, these writers, that in this century, the paramount moral challenge should be the struggle to achieve gender equality around the world. The United Nations is currently in the final stage to craft the post-2015 development agenda. And we believe that this new global development plan must alter the lives of women and girls and actively pursue gender equality. When working to achieve dignity for all of humanity, We must ensure the respect for all human rights, including women's human rights. In this day, women and girls are still disproportionately and systematically deprived of their rights. The pandemic of violence against women and girls is not just the biggest human rights violation in today's world. It is also a critical barrier to sustainable development and must be addressed with the highest priority, the highest urgency. It is clear that gender equality, women's and girls' empowerment are essential towards the realization of sustainable development, and that it is vital to the well-being of our societies. To be able to end poverty, the United Nations must address the persistent and growing poverty experienced by women and girls, as well as tackle structural causes of gender inequality that perpetuate its cycle. Men and women in leadership positions, but most definitely men, since at this stage there are more men than women in leadership positions, and I talk globally, economically, or business-wise, they should focus strongly on gender equality, not only to uphold women's human rights, but also because without gender equality and women's empowerment, the world community cannot dream of achieving other goals, be it poverty, eradication, reduction of inequalities, or inclusive economic growth. Men should understand that when girls are allowed to educate themselves, women are allowed to work and empowered at all levels of decision-making, economies grow, and better health is achieved for everybody. Distinguished guests, if women paid employment rates were raised to the same level as men, the Eurozone gross domestic product would be an estimate 13% higher, and Japan would be boosted by 16%. In 15 major developing economies, per capita income would rise by 14% by 2020 and 20% by 2030. Let me bring you back to the acceptance speech of the actress Patricia Arquette at the Oscars last month. She demanded equality in payment for men and women. Even though this comparison is a little bit distorted, since in the United States film industry we are talking about employment rates in the millions, while in major parts of the world women are struggling to even be recognized as being allowed to work and to be paid, etc., her claim proves that this inequality between men and women is systematic and high up. Ladies and gentlemen, if women had the same access as men to productive assets, agriculture output in 34 developing countries would rise by an estimate average of up to 4%. This could reduce the number of undernourished people in those countries by as much as 70%, translating to up to 150 million fewer hungry people. Women make enormous contributions to economics, whether in business or science, on farms, as entrepreneurs or employees. Women and girls are also doing most of the unpaid household and care work. Healthy, educated, and empowered women and girls are crucial for a healthier planet. Fortunately, there is general recognition among various UN member states that the post-2015 development agenda should include a strong and comprehensive goal on gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls, as well as integrating gender perspective throughout the entire framework. Ladies and gentlemen, let me end my remark with a quote from the youngest speaker at the United Nations Barbershop Conference almost 1.5 months ago, Max Bryant, a brilliant 13-year-old boy from New Jersey who raised funds to send 18 girls to school for a year after he read about the story of Malala. Max, I think Max is here, and Max said, in my opinion, Max made the most powerful statement at the conference when he said, and I quote, "I'm not here because I feel sorry for girls who cannot go to school. I think it is unfair that people can be denied education because they have one additional X chromosome," end quote. Distinguished audience, think about it. It was a 13-year-old boy, Max Bryant, who reminded all men at the United Nations what this struggle is all about. I thank you very much.
Hi, I am so thrilled to be here today at this historic conference. And I want to say, and I'm going to address the men in the room, even though I, of course, as always, appreciate all the women in the room as well. But I really want to say to the men who are here today, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming here to be in discourse, to be in dialogue with your open hearts, with your spirits, in a true desire to transform human consciousness and look at the ways we can redefine masculinity and manhood so that we can end violence against women and girls and create a society of equality and mutuality and interdependence. I really want to thank Michael Kimmel, who is a true visionary, and his extraordinary work in bringing everyone together today, and for his ongoing path-breaking work in redefining masculinity and manhood. And I want to say that I'm a proud member of the advisory board of the Center for the Study of Men and Masculinities. I have just come out of an extraordinary year in 1 Billion Rising Revolution, and I share this because I am so moved to see how many men have risen up around the world to join us in solidarity, in allyship, in friendship, in love, men who are making declarations, men are dancing, men are writing poems, writing songs, men who are in true collaboration with their hearts and spirits, longing for a world where women are free and safe, as they know that the liberation of women is, of course, the liberation of men. I can't think of a more important thing for you all to be doing than having a conference which ignites a dialogue and ignites an action direction path for how we are going to transform this consciousness. And I really believe this could be a tipping point moment where the 800 gathered in this place become the seeds that will revolutionize men across the planet. So I wish you the greatest conference. I am so there with you in spirit and heart. And may this conference be the igniting of a new man, a new way of living on the planet, the end of violence against women and girls, and the final deconstruction of patriarchy.
And thank you, Eve Isler, for igniting a global movement to end violence against women. And thank you, Ambassador and Madam Executive Director, and all the other voices that we've heard in this room and on the screen, reminding us of the importance of the work that we're here to do together, reminding us that the progress, the purpose that we're all leading towards cannot happen unless we collaborate, cooperate, lean in together. Our next speaker is known for that phrase, lean in. She first spoke about it in a TED Talk in 2010 at TED Women, and then transformed it into a book that became a transformative global movement for so many women. Sheryl Sandberg has been on the cover of Time and on every powerful women's list, and there's a reason. She looks at social and cultural shifts and sees an opportunity to change, to shift the way we think, the way we work, the way we live. And today, the Lean In movement that has transformed the lives of women in many places invited men to lean in with them. Please join me in welcoming Sheryl Sandberg.
It's such an honor to be here with so many people I admire so much. the great Fumzili who leads all of us with her efforts for UN women around the world, and I think is very much everyone's soul sister as we follow your great work. Ambassador Gloria Steinem, who's been such a dear friend to all of us. The great Pat Mitchell, who talked me into giving my first TED Talk, which led to all of this. Jennifer Siebel-Newsom, so many of you. It is great to be here. A few years ago, a father in LA, Dwayne Richards, posted and tweeted that photo. People loved it, and it went completely viral. And you can understand why, because it's a really touching image. Then some people pointed out that if a woman posted that photo, it never could have gone viral because that's a daily occurrence. Dwayne himself spoke out on this. He said, "We're doing parents a grave disservice if you make me out to be a hero." I don't know if he's a hero, but I know that he's a role model, and I think that picture is a role model and a great image of why we're all here today. We're here today with this great conference you've put together because we know that inequality is pervasive. We know that women are not equal in the workplace. Women are not equally accepted as leaders. And we know men are not equal in the home, that men are not fully supported as caregivers. And we know that this is hurting all of us. Everyone here knows this is hurting all of us. But sometimes everyone's not convinced. Men will ask, is this bad for me? If women become more powerful, if women get more jobs, will there be less for me? And the answer that this conference poses to that question is an unequivocal no. Because equality is not a zero-sum game, but something that makes everyone better off. We know that marriages are happier when people share responsibilities. We know that children are better off when they have active fathers. We know that companies and organizations are more productive. The ambassador just shared with us so much great data on how women can help power economies and the cost to us of not having full participation. And we all sit here today knowing that we'd all be better off if everyone had choices, real choices. Boys and girls had equal choices to work outside and inside their home to fully participate and decide what they wanted to do, not what narrow stereotypes dictate. So I'm here today to talk about 3 things men can do to lean in and make the world more equal. 3 simple things that anyone can do today. First, I told women in my book to sit at the table, take their seat, raise their voice. I tell men all the time to sit at the table, the kitchen table. Be an active father. Jimmy Rollins was a baseball player playing for the Phillies. He took 2 games off for paternity leave. He got broadly criticized. How can he miss a game? He's a professional baseball player. 2 games. But he was smart because he knows that at any income level, no matter how active a mother is, children with involved and active fathers are better off. They are happier, they are healthier, they are more successful at work and in school. For daughters, you create a cycle of autonomy and empowerment. And for sons, you create a cycle of equality that passes to the next generation. And fathers themselves, when they're more involved with their children, are happier and have greater job satisfaction. So be an active father, as every man here already knows and does. Form deep and rich connections with your children. Sit at the kitchen table. 2, I often tell women, make your partner a real partner. So our message, this conference's message to men, is be a 50-50 partner at home. This is I've been looking forward all day to doing this because I ask this question all the time, and I think I'm going to get a different answer here. Men in this audience, men only, raise your hand if you are doing at least half at home. I just wish I had my phone up here. Will you take that picture for me? Keep your hands up. I really need that picture. Okay, because I have asked audiences that question all over the world, and let's face it, when you ask people that question publicly, they're probably overestimating, not underestimating. Now, we know the data. We know that same-sex couples share chores more evenly, but we know that straight couples don't. Even with 2 working parents, and I always remind everyone, 70% of women in this country, mothers, work, and they have to work. Mothers are doing the majority of the childcare and the housework. Not in this audience. Again, that picture will stay with me. But being a 50-50 partner is good for men. Marriages are stronger, divorce rates are lower, marital satisfaction is higher. And if that's not good enough, more sex and better sex. Chore play is real. I've told men all over the world, if you want to do something nice for your wife or your girlfriend or your partner tonight, don't buy flowers, do laundry. The CEO of FTD, the flower company, heard me say this, and he sent me this huge bouquet with a note. Can't you tell men to buy flowers and do laundry? Why is it an either or? And despite his kind gift, I'm here to say that if there's a choice, definitely do the laundry. Apparently one man heard me say this, and his wife asked him to do a load of laundry. He picked up the basket, turned around, and said, "Is this lean-in laundry?" But it won't just strengthen your marriage. Being an active father for men really benefits your children. There's a new study out looking at girls aged 7 to 13. By the age of 14, a daughter who sees her father doing more in the home has broader career aspirations than a daughter who doesn't. And what we know is that what matters is what you do more than what you say, because no amount of, "Darling, you can do anything," is as credible as having her see you wash the dishes. Now, in order for fathers to be active and 50-50 partners, we all need to give men more support, much more support than we do. Too few companies offer the flexibility they can, and even when they do, they make it a women's issue. But almost half of fathers in the United States, and I'm sure fathers around the world, are worried they don't spend enough time with their children. This is a really bad business decision. I speak as a corporate executive now, because fathers who are more involved with their children are less likely to consider quitting their jobs. As you said in your opening, the United States is behind Saudi Arabia in legislating maternity leave. That's a bad place to be. An even lower percentage of fathers get any paternity leave at all. And even when they do, it's harder for fathers to take it. Even more than women, the data shows fathers can be seen as less committed. They get lower performance ratings. Their earnings are reduced. My colleague at Facebook, Tom Stocky, is our vice president of search. And he took the 4 months Facebook offers as paternity leave. And then he wrote a really honest and heartfelt blog and post on Facebook where he said this was really hard. He felt that all the groups were called Mommy and Me, and that really wasn't very inviting. And he felt like women would cautiously eye him in the playground and pull their children closer. He felt the pressure of low expectations. He got so much praise for doing what his wife would never get any praise for. And people say things like daddy daycare and babysitting. As this conference shows, as the men in this audience shows, men want to be active. I was really excited about the ads, which people here may have seen in the Super Bowl this year. Nissan, Toyota, Dove, marketing to men as fathers. If you had asked any of us 5 years ago, would you try to sell a car to a man by telling him he could be a better father, or by telling him he could drive really fast? We've been telling men they can drive really fast for a very long time, but Nissan and Toyota tried to sell cars to men this month in the biggest marketing event of the year by telling them they could be good fathers. Third, lean in to support women at work. As the ambassador said, we know there's so much data that diverse companies, diverse teams perform better. But this is also in the interest of individual men, because if you are the man who can work better with 50% of the population, you're going to overperform. You're going to outperform. So how? How are you going to do it? You need to understand and correct for the biases. Work is hard. Work is hard for men. No one here thinks men have it easy. But in some ways, the stereotypes make work harder for women because men are supposed to be leaders and women are supposed to be caregivers. And we all have these biases. And they're hard to admit, but they're playing out in our workforce, and they're a part of explaining why women who got 50% of the college degrees in this country in 1981 still have 5% of the top jobs. Women are systematically underestimated in performance, starting with mothers estimating their babies crawling. Mothers think their sons have crawled further than they have, and their daughters a little bit less. That same thing happens to the workplace, and gender-blind studies show us over and over that if you take gender out of the equation, women do better. They do the same thing on race. Take names off a resume, ask people who they'll interview, and a white-sounding name is worth 8 years in the workforce over a name of someone of color. That shows you these performance biases and how we have to work harder to overcorrect them. Women do more office housework. Women don't only do more work, communal work in the home, but they do it in the office. Women take the notes, mentor other people, do more for others. And when men do these things, we thank them and reward them with higher performance ratings. But when women do these things, we don't thank them. The good news for men is if you volunteer to do stuff, again, you'll outperform your peers and you'll be working towards equality at the same time, which is a nice win-win. Women have a harder time being heard. They don't speak up as much as men in the workplace, and when they do, they get more pushback, seen as more aggressive, interrupted more. Jessica Bennett in Time magazine called this man-terrupting. But the truth is women interrupt women more as well, because again, women and men have these biases. I go back to this picture because I think equality is within our grasp. The fact that there is a Masculinities conference that attracts the people here, that gets Fumzili and Gloria and Pat and Jennifer in one room with all of these incredible men, shows that equality is not just an issue for women, but shows for men. There's an old feminist saying that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. I'll note, since she's here, that this has been incorrectly attributed to Gloria for a very long time. Turns out, that fish could really use that bicycle. It's gonna go better if we all work together. As Pat mentioned, we launched the Lean In Together campaign, working closely with He for She UN Women and closely with so many efforts around the world, like the Masculinities Conference, to celebrate men who are leaning in and for men to celebrate women. On our website, leanintogether.org, there are practical tips, what men can do at home, at work, and as managers. And we have going a social media campaign. We hope you all will join us. Men, post a picture. Hugh Jackman, he's a movie star. He posted a picture of himself taking out the trash. And Warren Buffett posted a picture of a Berkshire Hathaway CEO celebrating her for her success and thanking her. And John Skipper, the CEO of ESPN, he posted a picture of himself with all his female execs and thanked them for the work that's helped make ESPN successful. Women are celebrating men. I celebrated my husband and my boss today. Celebrate the men who support us, who help us lean in, who believe as much in equality as we do. Like so many people here, I go back to my children. I have a 9-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. And my greatest hope is that they will be able to work in either forum, in either place, according to their personal passions. My greatest hope is that they will enter a world that has more equality, where women around the globe will not face the things we have heard about today, the things we see every day. I'd even venture to say that if more women ran more countries, a lot of these things might change, and I know that is something so many of us deeply believe. I think Michael Kimmel, the organizer of this conference, may just have said it best. He said, "This is not about us versus them. This is about men and women leaning in together and leaning on each other too. Thank you.
You just heard the launch of a brand new part of leanin.org, which is to engage men around supporting women and gender equality. And I just want to make a very quick announcement that you're now going to hear another announcement about something new and really quite wonderful. In Pumfile's address, what you heard was the announcement of a new program that UN Women is launching. It's called Impact, and what they're doing is they're developing 10 universities, 10 corporations, 10 heads of state who are going to stand up and be the first to work with UN Women. And I am proud to say that tonight, the SUNY system signed on to be one of the 10 universities around the world to work with them. Pumfile, Charlie. Now, of course, she had planned to pin President Stanley. Charlie already has his pin, as do I. But he's going to take one for the team now and take it for President Stanley. Stony Brook University and the State University of New York system is one of the 10 he-for-she universities in the world. Thank you.
Jennifer Siebel Newsom is a filmmaker and a founder of the Representation Project. She began her career in front of the camera as an actor in television and movies like Mad Men and Rent and Something's Gotta Give. Dismayed by the images of women and girls in the media, she realized she wanted to do more work behind the camera. And so she wrote and directed and produced the amazing documentary, Misrepresentation, which was fantastic if you haven't seen it, which premiered at the 2011 Sundance Festival and has become a staple in schools around the country on media and images of women and girls. Her newest film is The Mask You Live In, which turns our attention to our culture's narrow and damaging definition of masculinity. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival last month, and we are so honored to be screening it in New York City for the first time. Everyone, Jennifer Siebel Newsom.
Rosanna's documentary, Searching for Deborah Winger, and later Gina Davis's research on gender and media really inspired me. And they made me feel like I wasn't alone in my thinking, that something was wrong with the way the entertainment industry and our larger culture valued women and girls. And so you gave me the confidence to go out there and make Misrepresentation, which obviously stars Pat Mitchell and Gloria Steinem, and some of the wonderful women that will be here, I believe, this weekend, which premiered at Sundance in 2011 and exposed the impact, actually, of American masculinity on our women and girls. Think about that for a second. Because what's interesting is we didn't frame the film as a critique on American masculinity, even though that was the subtext. The film's byline has always been more of a call to action. Misrepresentation explores the underrepresentation of women in positions of power and influence in America and challenges the media's limited portrayal of what it means to be a powerful woman. So I traveled the world with Misrepresentation, speaking in places as far away as Abu Dhabi, Singapore, Monterrey, Mexico, Toronto, Canada, and as close to home as our neighborhood schools. And in the hundreds of speaking engagements around the world, I kept the focus on inspiring our girls and women to lead at home, at school, and in their places of work. Inevitably, though, there would always be parents who thanked me for the film, but would ask, what about our boys? Isn't there a boy crisis going on? And on the other hand, separately, they would say, how can we help our boys be a part of the solution instead of the problem? Now, I was pregnant with my son Hunter at the time we premiered Misrepresentation and launched the Representation Project. And I was both curious as a soon-to-be mother of a son, but very anxious to get to the bottom of this boy crisis. So we embarked on research, and what we discovered was alarming. So compared to girls, boys are more likely to be diagnosed with a behavior disorder, prescribed prescription meds, be expelled from school, binge drink, commit a violent crime, and/or take their own lives. In essence, what I was learning was that our boys were suffering and that we as a society were failing our boys. We were limiting their humanity by pressuring them to conform to a man box or a straitjacket of sorts. We were asking them to disassociate and to disconnect their hearts from their heads and to don a mask of masculinity. It's ironic, isn't it, that just as we've limited our girls and women, the masculine paradigm has also been harming our boys and men. So with our new film, The Mask You Live In, we explore the impact of American masculinity on our boys and men. And we explore how, as a society, as parents, as coaches, as educators, and as media, we're ultimately failing our boys. Our goals with The Mask You Live In and our work at the Representation Project is threefold, and I look so forward to working, hopefully, with all of you to achieve these goals and our mutual goals. But our goals are really threefold. First is to really have a national conversation, hopefully a global conversation, that expands what it is to be a man. Masculinity needs to be about so much more than physical force, sexual conquest, and economic success. These stereotypes are harming all of us. Our second goal is that we as parents and mentors, we need to model whole, healthy masculinity. It's up to us to give the next several generations a positive representation of being a man that does not hinder their social and emotional well-being. And finally, we have to support our boys in being their whole selves. We have to help them connect their hearts to their heads so they can find the courage and conviction to stay true to themselves. It's a testament to the importance of this conversation and the work that all of you do that we're attending a conference on masculinities. And I want to thank you, Michael, in particular, and Stony Brook for inviting me to be here today. I so look forward to continuing the conversation and working with all of you. I hope you'll join us at the Representation Project, which uses film and media as a catalyst for cultural transformation. We want to inspire individuals and communities to challenge and overcome limiting stereotypes, regardless of gender, race, class, age, sexual orientation, or circumstance, so that they can fulfill their human potential. And with that, I want to share with you the trailer of The Mask You Live In, which Rosanna, I'm so sorry, I love you, and it's late, will be screened tomorrow afternoon at the conference. It's also available as of this week for public and private screenings. And I'm also thrilled that our education curriculum, kindergarten through second, third through fifth, middle school, high school, and college is also available at the end of the month. We're obviously all working towards a common goal of expanding what it means to be a man. And I thank you all for doing your part in contributing. And I know that working together, we will succeed. So thank you.
Our next entertainment is going to turn a fairy tale on its head, too. Poison apples and those glass slippers, well, you can forget those. Who needs them? Snow White and her posse of disenchanted princesses are in the hilarious hit Off-Broadway musical, Disenchanted. Now, you forget those princesses that you think that we knew and that we grew up wanting to be, because after multiple sold-out runs of this play nationwide, these royal renegades took off their tiaras. They're going to bring their subversive and not-for-the-kiddies musical to New York City, opening March 19th at the West Side Theater. But here they are with us tonight, right straight from Disenchanted. Erin Lee Peck as Snow White, Jen Bechter as the Little Mermaid, and Sora Joy Ross as the princess who kissed the frog.
And with one kiss from the handsome prince, Snow White opened her eyes She instantly fell in love with the prince, and soon after, they were married.
The prince placed the glass slipper on Cinderella's foot. The slipper fit perfectly. She instantly fell in love with the prince, and soon after, they were married.
Sleeping Beauty was kissed by a very handsome prince, and she awoke from 100-year sleep. She instantly fell in love with the prince, and soon after, they were married.
And they lived happily ever after. Well, not exactly. Hit it! Skin as white as snow, lips cherry red.
$1 million crown of shiny jewels sits on my pretty little head.
A castle on a hill, a handsome prince for kisses.
There's nothing that's gone missing from the fairy tales you've read.
I dream of never-ending youth.
No wrinkles and no lines.
Oh, would you wake up?
Okay.
Because it's time we told the world the truth. That all these films and fairy tales are driving us out of our freaking princess minds. Good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Lee Peck.
I'm Sarah Joy Ross.
And I'm Jen Bechter.
And we're here from the West Side Theater with the off-Broadway musical comedy hit Disenchanted. Now in the show, thank you, in which I play a kick-ass Snow White, the princesses from the original fairy tales have had it up to their crowns with how they're portrayed in today's pop culture and animated movies.
They make us look weak.
Like helpless damsels in distress.
So these princesses jump out of the storybooks and onto the stage every night to tell you the truth about Happily Ever After. Because trust me, Happily Ever After ain't all it's cracked up to be. Take, for instance, the disenchanted princess who comes to us all the way from Copenhagen to share her story of happily ever after. She's a girl with her very own fishtail. She gave up her father, her fin, and even her voice just to net a man.
Yeah, they get it. I'm the frickin' Little Mermaid. Woo!
And here's the Little Mermaid singing Two Legs.
Long ago, when I was just a glimmer in my parents' eyes, girls like me never dared step out of line. Then I came across this teenage boy crazed swimmer with the flirty eyes, a spoiled problem child, a headstrong bride. Then one night, a stormy sea tossed a ship about. Handsome prince fell overboard, and I gave him mouth to mouth. From then on, I was hooked, and I knew this rebellious starter would walk among the world out there, a red-headed bipedal fish out of water. Oh, 2 legs, too many. I'd gladly dump my 6-inch heels to jump back in with the moray eels. Too late to turn back now. I can't believe I swapped the 7 seas for a prince and a pair of these. Now don't get me wrong, I love my husband dearly with all my heart, but I'm wondering if I made a foolish trade. Oh, handing in my mermaid friend was clearly
not all that smart.
'Cause now I've gotta spread these to get laid.
Oh, her legs.
They're inconvenient. I gotta shave them twice a week, and I find I have to cross them, or else I'll give the boys a pig and her feet require tending, 'cause they blister up and crack. I wish to dance and bicycle, but after both my arches fell, I wish she'd throw me back. Oh, too late. Too many. I'd happily ditch these nicks and scabs to spend my life with the horseshoe crabs. Too late to turn back now. I can't believe I swapped the 7 seas for a prince and a pair of these. Now I despise having flabby thighs, and I give them up with glee. If I knew I could go back to 20,000 goddamn leagues underneath the sea. Too late. Too many. I'd freely trade my bathroom scale to dive and breach with the humpback whale. Too late to turn back now. I'd freely junk these pantyhose for the smell of floxin in my nose. Too late to turn back now. I can't believe I swapped the 7 seas for a prince and a pair of these. Now I'm down on knobby knees. I pray someday that I'll swap these and return to the 7 seas. 7 seas.
Our final keynote speaker has been an inspiration to me. You've heard from women tonight who are such inspirations to me, to the work that I think many of us in this room are doing. And no one is more inspiring to me than Gloria Steinem. And I want to say something very personal about her, because it would be a really, really long introduction were I to actually sort of list her accomplishments. But I want to just say something personally about how I've been inspired by her. And I want to tell you a story. I don't even know if you remember this. We were at this, I think it was the Feminist Expo in Washington, D.C. And I had been invited to give a talk at this thing. And one of the afternoons, they asked all of the speakers who had books that were available. They asked us all to go to this big, the booth, the exhibit area and we would have one organized hour or so for book signings. So I was feeling pretty, cool. I thought, oh, great, I'll go sit there and, 8 people will come and I'll sign their books and this will be really exciting. And I got down to the room about the time that they had asked us to get there. And I noticed that at all of the tables where we were supposed to sit, all of the authors, there were about 6 or 7 people, except for one table, where there was a line that went this way around the entire room, out the door, down the hall. And this was a feminist expo for young women, mostly high school and college-age women. And they were all standing there holding their copies of Revolution from Within. They were holding a copy of something of Gloria's. And so I finished my book signing in a matter of minutes. And then I decided I was going to watch and see what would happen with this enormous line. And what I watched was for 3 hours, Gloria sat there and made a personal contact with every single person who she spoke to. Everyone wanted to meet her, everyone wanted to talk to her, everyone wanted to have a selfie, everybody wanted to, and what I saw was so inspiring to me was the way she made a personal connection with every single person as they came to her. I said to myself that day, I am never, for the 9 people who would now come to ask for a book signing for me, I will make that same commitment that every single time someone makes an effort to make some kind of connection with the work that we do, I will respond in kind. And I watched for 3 hours as she did that with every single person. It completely changed how I see myself and work in the public arena, and I thank you for that. Gloria, you have taught me an enormous amount. You've been a great inspiration, and I welcome you.
I'm not sure I can live up to my introduction. Oh, Michael, thank you so much. That means a lot. And actually, when I'm in that situation, I find myself thinking, this may be the only time that this person and I have contact, right? And I feel that way about this room, because we are gathered here in a group that has never been exactly the same before and will never be exactly the same again. And each one of us is a kind of miracle of heredity and environment combined over millennia and millennia in a way that is uniquely us and has never happened before and can never happen again. So my deep hope for this conference is that each of us, even though I mean, we have to sit like this with looking at each other's backs, but we know that hierarchy is based on patriarchy. Patriarchy doesn't work anywhere anymore, right? So I hope that we can really consider ourselves sitting in a circle and speaking what we authentically want to say, and that somehow, because Michael has given us this great gift of this conference, things are going to be different the next day and the next and the next. Now, my problem is I've been sitting over there scribbling in my notes. I mean, how would you like to be in this position, right? The last speaker, everybody has said all these fan-fucking-tastic things. So I was reduced to, I decided maybe I should try to do, you can see I've been scribbling, okay? I should try to do, it's sort of like David Letterman, you know, the 10 top, the 10 top reasons why we're in this together. Women and men are in this together. We'll try this. We'll see what happens. 10, stereotypes squelch men's skills too. Now, this came home to me because I was of the generation that only women could type. Do you remember that? Fine motor skills, so on. And, right. Right. And, you know, the miracle was that computers arrived and suddenly men could type. So it's like proof to me that, you know, we can all change, right? Let's see. 9. Let's see. What are wrongly called feminine skills are just those that are necessary to raise children. Patience, empathy, attention to detail. That's it, right? There is no such thing as masculine and feminine skills. There are human skills. Hello? So, and when men acquire these skills, you know, I mean, we're becoming, men in a kind of general way, I think, get to become their whole human selves by raising children, coming into the home, coming into spheres where they haven't been, and women get to be their whole human selves, going outside the home sometimes, not to overgeneralize, but the goal for both of us is to become our whole selves. And it's, I have to say, wanted to pay tribute to my father because he was one of those people, actually. I owe a lot to my father, including that I'm friends with all my old lovers because they were nice people. Totally because of my father. And his favorite story about me was that when I was about 5 years old, we were in a little country store together, and I asked him for a nickel. And he said, "What for?" And according to him, I said, "You can give it to me or you can not give it to me, but you can't ask me what it's for." And he said, "That's right." And he gave me the nickel. So this story, as far as he was concerned, was about me, but actually in real life, it was about him. Because every child has a sense of themselves. They're born with a sense of themselves. Every kid in the world that I've ever met, unless they've been humiliated or shamed or tamed in some way, say in every language something like, "It's not fair, and you are not the boss of me," right? So, as I thank Michael, I want to thank my father. 8, men have been lonely without partners who share interests, and without that kind of closeness. In the 1950s, the kind of Mad Men, listen, I lived through the 50s, way worse than Mad Men, way worse. And men were lonely. They were being told to marry, essentially to marry housekeepers with whom they might or might not share interests. And their lives became so instantly different in the home and outside the home that conversation and closeness and comradeship was very, very difficult. Each one was a trophy for the other, but not a person, not a whole person. Let's see, 7. Men's life expectancy increases by 3 to 4 years if you deduct from all the reasons that men die, those that could be reasonably attributed to the masculine role. Deaths from violence, from speeding, from tension-related diseases. If you deduct all of that, that men would live 3 or 4 years longer. Now, what other movement can offer men 3 or 4 more years? Right. I just ask you, right? Okay. It's not a bad offer. 6, this will enable boys to remain close to their mothers, which otherwise homophobia has told us is not right, that women are supposed to push their sons away, which means often that because boys then feel betrayed by the person they're often closest to, they never trust another woman, right? So boys will be able to remain close to their mothers, and they will be able to remain close to their fathers because they won't have to compete. They won't have to kill and replace their fathers, which is the Freudian model, right? What a huge gift this movement has for men as well as women. 5, if men aren't hooked on dominance, which is a drug, the idea that you have to be dominant, no man invented that. Everybody got born into it, but some men get hooked on it as a drug, especially if they have been dominated and had this model in their families. And it literally becomes a drug. So you will hear men who attack women, who rape women, 80-year-old women, children, they talk about it as they needed a fix. They talk about it in exactly the same way as a drug. Now, and also it causes, of course, it causes men to eroticize children because you can't get that much dominance from another adult. So the helplessness of children becomes eroticized by the addiction to dominance. Now 4, I'm kind of making this up, but I think it's really a good one, which is men will be able to laugh. It turns out that laughter is the only free emotion. You can compel fear, as we know. You can actually also compel love if people are kept isolated and dependent for long enough to survive. They come to as in the Stockholm Syndrome or in other, you come to depend on and be linked with and enmeshed with your captor. But you can't compel laughter. It happens when two things come together suddenly and make a third. It comes from surprise. It's kind of an orgasm of the mind, I think. It's unexpected. Einstein, who could not possibly have said everything that he was supposed to have said, is said to have said that he had to be really careful while he was shaving in the morning, because if he had an idea, if he thought of something, he laughed and he cut himself. We laugh when we learn. And in the lore of Indian country, in the spirituality of Indian country, laughter is the means of breaking from the real into the spiritual. And there's a belief that you can't pray unless you have laughed. All right? So that kind of freedom will be and must be available to all of us, women as well as men as well as women. 3, we will just be able to find all of our talents. Men will be able to find all of their talents. They won't be told that playing the violin is not appropriate, or that designing clothes is not right, or that wearing pink is not right, or that, whatever it is, men will be able to choose what they really, truly want within themselves. 2, and this is a big one, we will all be able to eliminate the pattern for race and class, which punishes, and caste, which punishes everyone. If we didn't have the idea of division so early that convinces us that people can be divided into groups and generalized about, we would not accept the ridiculous idea that we can generalize people by race, by class, by sexuality, by ethnicity, by anything else. And I think the final one, because things are not easy here right now in this world, lots of dangers, we will eliminate the root cause of almost all violence that is not in self-defense. So many of the crimes that we see around us should really be called supremacy crimes, because they are crimes in which an aggrieved, angry male human being, and almost always a white male human being, committing senseless murders, going into public places, shooting people. The kinds of crimes from which you get nothing. You don't get money, you don't get a pair of sneakers, nothing. It's all about declaring supremacy. It's domestic violence that doesn't help anybody. And frequently when men murder the women in their lives, they then kill themselves. They are not gaining. The people who go into public places and shoot, these really, I think, should be called supremacy crimes. Because this has become so severe, these supremacy crimes, because of female infanticide, female infanticide helps no one. Now there is so much son surplus and daughter deficit in the world that it's become a national security problem, that the Chinese kidnap women from North Korea across the border, that from South India to North India, women are sold or kidnapped because the sex ratio is so off now in northern India. It helps no one. It only has to do with the devaluing of girls and the overvaluing of men, and it has created a generation, plural generations of men and boys who are called bare branches, because they have no women to marry. They frequently are unemployed. They're the population on which from which terrorists recruit. It is so against our own our mutual interest, but it has been so prevalent, whether it's FGM or honor killings or child marriage, which is the biggest cause of injury and death among teenage girls, premature births, giving birth prematurely. The sex trafficking, prostitution in this country, the average age of entry of a woman into prostitution is between 12 and 13. I mean, you know, all of these crimes have ended up with a first time ever, as far as we know, situation, which is there are now fewer females than males on Spaceship Earth. We don't think that's ever happened before. And it is so, so, so dangerous. But we also have now the research, the studies, the means of proving beyond any doubt in every country in the world that the biggest indicator of whether there will be violence inside a country or whether that country will be willing to use military violence against another country is not poverty or access to natural resources or religion or even degree of democracy. It's violence against females. Not because female life is any more, we're not saying it's any more valuable than male life, absolutely not. But the vision, in the household, with the kind of intimacy that makes it seem normal, the domination of females, then normalizes the idea of domination by class, by race, by everything else, and it makes it seem inevitable. It makes it feel like home. So on this planet that we share, it should be a main point in our foreign policy, right? Our foreign policy is mainly, it would be nice. It would be nice if women were equal and girls were equal. It would be nice, but it's not serious. It's not a concern. It's not a central concern. And actually, it has to be a central concern. So the question is, how do we get out of this? The way we got in. That's how. Because systems of patriarchy and male dominance that we were born into did not always exist. It was entirely the idea of controlling reproduction, which came about in a very systematic and political way. God was not always male. God was for most of human history, everything, all living things. Now, religion has become politics in the sky, basically. Politics you can't talk about, right? We have to start talking about it. Spirituality is something else to me. I find it helpful to use two different words. But religion is really politics. Why does God always look like the ruling class? You know, even as a child, I wondered why Jesus was white and blue-eyed and blonde in the middle of the Middle East. I thought that was but why is God is God a male as well? It's because we arrived at, gradually over time, first in Europe became the pioneers of patriarchy, the control of reproduction by males and therefore the control of women's bodies. It was not always the case, and it spread through colonialism and conquering to this continent and to other continents. And we get out of this situation. Reproductive freedom and women's ability to control their own bodies is fundamental to getting us out. It restores the balance between women and men. And those who are not allowed to separate sexuality from reproduction by choice, and those who are forced to separate them and become objects of pleasure, it all derives from trying to control reproduction. But I find it crucial to remember that it wasn't always this way, that we weren't always in a hierarchical system where groupism was the key. For the first 90% of human history, maybe more, females and males had balanced and porous and adjustable roles that were not based on the domination of females by males, just as their cultures were not based on humans dominating nature. Humans and nature, women and men, were linked rather than ranked. The circle, not the hierarchy, was the organizing principle of our thinking and planning. Even languages were not gendered. Cherokee and a lot of the native languages and Bengali, a lot of the old languages don't have he and she. People were people. What a concept, you know? And then, of course, it got so bad we got Romance languages. No wonder they call them Romance languages. They give gender to tables and chairs. Excuse me? What is that? I've been reading the accounts of early European arrivals on this subcontinent here that was once called Turtle Island, actually, before Europeans showed up. And they write about how shocked they were, shocked to discover that children weren't beaten. Children had to have the devil beaten out of them, they felt. They were shocked by the idea that children were not beaten, and that women controlled their own fertility and decided when and whether to have children, and understood how to do this with herbs and abortifacients and so on. And that women controlled agriculture by and large, and men hunted, but the roles were porous, and they were equal in any case. They were both equally necessary. Children, they were matrilineal, not matriarchal. Women did not dominate men, no, it wasn't like patriarchy, but matrilineal, so that children took their mother's clan name, for instance. And the female elders chose the male chief and were sometimes chiefs themselves. There was no prostitution. And the wonderful letters about how even these savages, as one of the Brits put it, don't seem to rape, not even their European female captives. Imagine that. And Benjamin Franklin was so pissed that Europeans kept deserting European settlements and going over to Indian country. He said, we're very nice to them, and suddenly they leave. It's the opposite of what Hollywood told us, right? Anyway, I find this very comforting because it helps me know that the problems we see today are not inevitable. They are not human nature, and therefore we can change. So here is both the good news and the bad news of being human. Our brains are more malleable than those of any other animal because 80% of them develop after birth. Therefore, we are more subject to our surroundings, to our community, to shaming, to restriction, to violence, and also to being valued and included. There are endless studies, as you know, of, for instance, Good Samaritans, that is, the people who rescued Jews during World War II, though they were not themselves Jewish and though they were risking their lives to do so. And when they asked these people trying to replicate them, was it education, was it religion, was it, what was it that caused them to act this way? They pretty uniformly said, I don't know why I did it, I just did it. It was the leap of empathy from one without which our species couldn't survive. It's the leap of empathy from one human being to another that they were feeling. And if we aren't shamed or treated with violence enough to break that leap of empathy, it is there. it is there. Looking back at these Good Samaritans, the only shared characteristic seemed to be that they were not abused as children. So the empathy that is part of our equipment as human beings, that was not interrupted. It isn't so much that we have to invent something new as we have to stop inventing something bad. That is the lesson, I think. We should not ever be in a situation in which there are only two choices, to be the victim or the victimizer. You know, sometimes I think the division into two is only legitimate in one place. People who divide everything into two and people who don't. Right. But the point is that we have no idea what might be possible if even one generation of children were raised without violence and without group judgments, and honoring them as unique individuals and members of the community in equal balance, which was the way that the Kwe and the San in Africa, the Dalits in India, the many native nations here, there was the general way that their cultures worked. It is not impossible. It's I wanted to say this because I think we're on the land here of the Six Nations of the Iroquois Confederacy. The Iroquois Confederacy inspired our Constitution, inspired the suffrage movement, was the biggest element of the Underground Railway during slavery. If it was here on this land before, it can be there again. This island was called Mannahatta. I go out in Central Park and put my hands on the rocks there, on the big igneous rocks, and I think someone else touched this and they live differently. And if they live differently, so can we. They understood that the human race is like a bird with two wings, and if one is broken, no one can fly. I thank Michael, I thank everyone for coming to this conference because you are helping the human race to fly again. Thank you.
Love poem to my younger self. Everything inside of you was floodlit. Infinite as daybreak, you were boisterous and bold, sensitive and soft, arms open to anything that would hold you. You were a cascade of offerings. A toothy overbite smile that even with headgear on could not be dimmed if you tried and you cried. At the end of the movie E.T., like that little alien was your best friend, or at least the family pet, all of your cousins made fun of you. But no matter what they said, you could never stop the flash floods. I do not remember the precise moment when you felt like your light was too bright, but there was a day when everything changed. That each blush became a stain to be washed. That tenderness became a curse to exorcise from your quivering throat. That tears became sudden proof that you were worthless. I met a 17-year-old boy at Rikers Island who told me that if he had seen a grown man cry in public 3 years earlier, he never would have picked up a gun. You never picked up a gun, thank God. But for most of your adolescence, you were a bomb waiting to explode. Who's to say you were not a breath away from being a 17-year-old staring down a life sentence? You were just like him. A lighthouse demolished into rubble. A beauty mark disfigured into wound. You listen to DMX as It's Dark and Hell is Hot on repeat, bench pressing far more weight than you could safely lift. Your basement, a dungeon of steel. You became a broken billboard, an anthem of numbness, a wannabe playboy, a head nodder, a fading shadow. Convince me that you are not that boy behind bars at Rikers. Convince me that you are better or different than your father. Convince me that you would have survived without a mother who forced you to walk the plank of your feather-triggered tear ducts. You were an aria of sorrow for a decade. A decade. Until the moment you realized that every sensitive thing inside of you was an access point for God. You spent half your life trying to become anyone but who you were, and the other half convincing yourself you were worthy of love. Nothing about you was ever wrong. If only all of us would know this. Maybe there wouldn't be so many beautiful men fading away into bottles and prison cells and far too early into the ground. Maybe then, each boy and man could unmask his scowl, bloom his fists into palms made for embrace, and finally offer the world a tender glimpse of that joy he has been waiting to share his entire life.
Wow. It falls to me to end our evening together. This was, from my perspective, an amazing way to start our conference. I want to thank my co-host and master of ceremonies, Pat, all of the amazing speakers and performers that you've heard. I look forward to the next 3 days, energized, excited, and inspired. Thank you all.